Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Sunday, February 16th, 2020, and I'd like to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research Channel here on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. Alright guys, well we're going to move on with my series on the quote-unquote giants, or large hominids, as I like to call them, state by state. And the next state we're going to move to is Oklahoma. Now, there isn't a lot of accounts in Oklahoma, but I wanted to do this one separately before I get to Texas, and Texas has a lot of interesting ones in it, so I wanted to cover that one in its entirety without, mixing the two states. So it's, if I have two states, that have very few accounts, I try to put them together because I cherry pick these accounts for the most interesting stories. And of course, often there's really not a lot of information, so just a simple account, and it's not really worth going over. But I want to include the best stuff, obviously, and but this doing these accounts here for Oklahoma made me realize something, so we'll get to that in a second. But let me get to it. It's not a lot, but as they are from state to state, it's just some of them are just fascinating to me and also indicate official accounts. So these official accounts are often of wonder to me because they went to university, they went to museums, wherever they went. And where are they? Are they keeping them out of the public view because they're considered Native American? See, here's where the thing gets sticky. Because this race, whether you're talking about Adena, Hopewell, whatever it is, okay, so they can go ahead and say that they're the ancestors. Of course, my hypothesis about it, because of the historical accounts of the giant, large chieftains, Native American chieftains in the historical times, evidently these type of two-tiered society continued on into historical times, like the Adena and Hopewell, as the anthropologists and archaeologists are finding out about now. But your good friend Budcat7 had already guessed that already from the research that I've done. So, but I don't got the sheepskin or enough nickels or whatever it is. But this is what we're talking about in a lot of instances. And you often find these large scale remains buried with people of just average stature. Well, you can almost bet that that's a direct indication of this two-tiered society. As I said, the excavations in Indiana indicated, and I read you that stuff when I did Indiana. I did read you an article about that, and apparently the Hopewell and the Adena were contemporaries living in this two-tiered society. So, in any case, let's get to the accounts. And I like Oklahoma, the musical. I don't know if you remember it, but Gordon McRae here with Shirley Jones, I believe, and she sure was a pretty girl. She's from a Partridge Family fame. Some of us might remember that. Pauls Valley, Oklahoma giant Indians. Bones indicate dead race of huge Indians. Pauls Valley, Oklahoma. Excavation work along the Washita River near here, where the skeletons of a tribe of giant Indians recently were discovered, continues under the direction of the University of Oklahoma and Tulsa University anthropologists. A half dozen of the skeletons, more than 7 feet tall, were uncovered after a rise in the river had caused a section of a bank to give way. Dr. Forrest C. Clements, head of the Department of Anthropology at the University of Oklahoma estimated the race existed 750 years ago. He believed the find might lead to discovery of a race of Indians unknown to anthropologists. So it's a race of Indians unknown to anthropologists, a race of Indians, so you have to assume that they're Indians. Of course, everything about them indicates a completely separate race and culture, but naturally you have to blend the two. It's the new world, etc., etc. So a lot of these ideas for being any other interpretation was certainly being suppressed. The excavations have attracted considerable attention, and visitors will be permitted only on Thursday, those in charge said. Pottery, arrowheads, and other relics have been found. I wonder what those other relics were. The jawbone of an animal believed to have been a deer also was uncovered. Okay. The WPA is furnishing a crew of 20 men to assist in the work. Clements said a detailed study of the finds, along with the study of layers of soil, will be necessary before the accurate estimate of the age of the skeletons can be made. And of course, we know that's all baloney because the strata in North America is all jumbled and mixed up and screwed up and doesn't correspond with a lot of world data, despite what they say. And the reason why it appears new is because it is all jumbled up and everything. So that's why they say it is. But it's a lot older. But the reason it happens is because the Americans got hammered by something from outer space, most likely. Not my theory. People like Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock and a whole bunch of other, Robert Schock, whoever, they all think that. I do too, but I'm more aligned with Velikovsky and the electric universe theories. Braided 9 feet tall Indians found in Mound. Oklahoma Indian relics unearthed. Thigh bone of a 9-foot man found in Mound of Braided, Oklahoma. Indian relics estimated to be from 600 to 2,000 years old. That's a mighty big span of time there. And including the thigh bone of a giant brave are being taken in large numbers from a huge burial mound 4.5 miles southwest of here. The mound in the middle of a field near the Arkansas River is 100 feet long and 40 feet high. It is of sand, making digging comparatively easy. So it's a sand mound. And it's just interesting how this sand mound kept its integrity for so long. Apparently it's not just sand, I would imagine, but they're not making any sort of accurate observations here, I'm sure. It's just impossible for something like that to maintain its integrity for centuries. Something else was added to it, I'm sure. Excavation about 20 feet deep have been made. Among the treasured finds is a large femur, indicating its owner must have been about 9 feet tall. Bones and skeletons of other human beings are of normal size. So pay attention to that right there. Bones and skeletons of other human beings of normal size, with one that was 9 feet tall. Okay, so are we having evidence here of this, again, the Adena and Hopewell cultures like them, or, similar to that, or in the same culture here where you had them as contemporaries engaging in the same spiritual beliefs and ceremonies together, you see, and living in this two-tiered society. Then you hear reports of large chieftains in various Native American Indian tribes, Native Peoples tribes here in the Americas, where the chieftains were large and the rest of their tribes seemed to be, just average size, maybe a little bit taller or whatever, but this is all good reasons. That's the integration of the large hominids into the general population that's the only way they could survive. They get their cells smaller, because if their cells were bigger, like all the bigger animals that were in a different gravity before whatever catastrophe happened that they say is the ice age, okay, all the creatures that had designed with bigger cells because of the effects of gravity. Okay, we went through this research on my channel, by the way, in biological gravity. So this is just a repeat of the article here, just to show that it was in more than one publication and is in something. Okay, so they have a couple of extra things to add to it, which is, I guess, a different publication. So here it says, you hear all the other stuff. Charred remains, some with remnants of flesh still clinging to them, have been located, indicating the redskins of many centuries ago cremated some of their dead. So here's a perfect opportunity to preserve this stuff and then get DNA from it in our time. But where did all these things go? Even though, officials, academics were dispatched to these sites. And here's something very interesting. Valuable pearls, several of them as large as the end of a person's thumb, which are mighty big, have been discovered only to crumble when brought to light. So could it be also that back when in the early Holocene and late Pleistocene, that even the pearls from clams were even bigger? Like the bigger maize found along with these people as we've gone over? Everything bigger. But not human beings, and not of a different type, and not, separate from Homo sapiens, nothing, none of that. Can't talk about that. So almost 400 seed pearls were found, and these things crumbled to dust, just like the skeletal remains. So, pearls are mighty hard. You can hit them with a hammer and they don't crush, the real ones, right? But when, these ancient ones, when brought into oxygenated atmosphere, seem to break down and oxidize rather quickly, crumbling to dust. Just like the skeletal remains. And here's where, the people who are the, academics who, insist that, skeletal remains be brought to their attention, well, they know perfectly well what's going to happen if somebody should find one by happenstance or something like that. Well, it's going to be disintegrated into nothing. It's just exposed to the air and not, preserved in any way. And they know that. They don't care. They know it. That's why they mock people like me. Like Ken Fader, Dr. Ken Fader, the hoax scam artist there. Arrowheads found in Mound are exceptionally fine workmanship. One collector has purchased 1,100 arrowheads. Okay, and they said almost 400 seed pearls were found piled in a heap with crushed shells. These were strung for preservation, so they tried to preserve those, I guess, and by stringing them. One collector has purchased 1,100 arrowheads. Well, here's where some of these artifacts went to. Somebody purchased them, and they just went, wherever, and lost forever. 8-foot skeleton in Luther, Oklahoma, which is not actually this article here. It's the one below it, but it's a good thing this one came up because I entirely skipped this state. But just from this account alone just shows how fascinating it's going to be. Well, I'm going to read it to you anyway, and I got to get back to that. Bad me. I just skipped it for some reason. But incidentally, at an interesting discovery of a giant human skeleton in a mound in West Virginia, which is the state I skipped, and I apologize. And there's a lot of great stuff there, by the way, was made recently by a group of University of Pennsylvania geologists. This find is particularly significant for the skeleton, besides being surrounded by crude jewelry, had stone implements and what must have been woven coverings. Okay, so these are not Native American Indians with these woven coverings. Okay, was buried with copper and bronze coins having indecipherable inscriptions. Okay, so alloyed copper created bronze. The mounds of the Ohio Valley, and indecipherable inscriptions. Did anybody ever bother to decipher them and try to get to the bottom of this history here? No. The mounds of the Ohio Valley have, and I don't know, I think it gets cut off. It says here now that there were giants in those days. Okay, so this is this famous Bible quote and whatever. So, and this, seen from that perspective, again, with the Nephilim and cannibalistic giants, which is all just a smear campaign against these people who are obviously vegetarians with the type of teeth that they had. And any dentist, even today, is going to tell you that these people must have had a diet that didn't have all these harmful enzymes from meat and everything else and sugars and whatnot in their diet. They were strictly vegetarians, and by the size of their teeth, they could chew up lots of vegetable material. And any sort of medical anthropologist knows the animals with bigger jaws or whatever can eat different kinds of things that we can't, because they can pulverize it up good. And maybe their digestive systems were different. We can't ever possibly know that, right? So how can you even determine something like that? Maybe they were. So just forget about the whole cannibalistic giant story. Is a smear campaign and propaganda. They came in the middle of the night and ate their children, boiling pots. Okay, so it's the boogeyman story by whoever. It doesn't matter. People from the Bible, Native American. I don't care who it is. It's as old as snot. Are you so lame and childlike that you don't understand what the story's about? It's about nonsense. They weren't cannibals. They were busy eating tool. Aquatic plants. Ding-a-ling. Out of all these facts, some bewildering, some illuminating, one point seems to stand out, that the race has gone to the species of fittest brains. The great dinosaurs succumbed to the keen intelligence of the little possums. The powerful human giants disappeared, and in their place rose men of less physical stature, but with increasing brain power. Well, not really. Right? If the American Indians are, they repeat over and over again, but this is seen in the European biblical context. Okay, so we see this whole thing, and I was just telling the subs about in my other video that lots of research has been done on the brain. As much as still don't understand it fully, but some of the research showed that it has nothing to do with the size of the brain. It has to do with the structure of the brain, not the size. Okay? Some people with some very, very tiny people, like a 5-foot lady, right, have like 185 IQs, so you can't tell me it has to do with the size. It has nothing to do with the size. It has to do with the structure. The size may add some extra features to it or whatever, but dolphins have more complex brains than humans and are bigger. But, I don't see them flying around in jets and stuff. They don't need to. They got all the food they need and like it just the way it is, just fine for them. and they talk and everything, apparently. But I forgot West Virginia, guys. I'm sorry about that. I'm going to go back and do that right away before we get to Texas. But Texas is also another fascinating one. It has to be done in a single video. I can't do it with another state. So here's the article, actually. 8-foot skeleton found in grave, Guthrie, Oklahoma, June 12. A giant human skeleton was unearthed in the Ford Cemetery at Luther, Oklahoma County, today by grave diggers. The skeleton was about 3 feet underground beneath a solid layer of rock. The skull, which was much larger than an ordinary man's head, and the other bones indicate that the giant human being must have been over 8 feet tall. The find is expected to be taken charge of by the state geologist at Norman. So, another official investigation. This is 1914, by the way, Seattle Star. Okay, so, and the other article mentioned the WPA, so that's during Roosevelt's time, 1937, when he implemented the work projects there. And that was often the case with a lot of those things. They found them during these work projects, and a very hasty examination of the ancient sites were done. And then the places were flooded with water or excavated or whatever it was to make room for these projects. And unfortunately, as I said, many of these things were done very hastily. And it had to be. But, whatever became of these things, like what was found here, this 8-foot guy. And again, as, we talked about with many people, even that Malaysian girl, talking about, resonance technology, sound technology to move large stone around. Okay, before we even get to that, let's look at really what this is not precision stone block building in some of these cases, but with rather large stone nevertheless. And it seems to be, a very orderly way of doing it or whatever. But these people of such a stature of, let's say, this 9-foot tall guy could lift a lot more and pull a lot more than people of average stature. You see, so where it might take 100 men to move a stone or something like that of average stature, it may only take 10 of these giant guys to do it. You see what I'm saying? And that's how these things could be moved around with a lot less people involved or humanoids involved. But these humanoids, being such great stature, were extremely strong, even as they, overall deteriorated in the new gravity on Earth as a result of the catastrophe that they say was an ice age, even though the weather got all screwed up. That's why you find, mammoths, woolly mammoths with, tropical vegetation in their mouth. In Siberia, they were flash frozen because, there was these catastrophes went on, and they, when something happens, it happens instantly, something of great magnitude. And it had nothing to do with the ice age per se coming on, but if the Earth was hammered by whatever it is, comets, asteroids, interplanetary electrical charge, it's going to go into some kind of winter for some period of time. But maybe that's what there's evidence of, and this whole glaciation thing is due to the catastrophe itself, that they think all this stuff laying around and whatnot. Okay? Just think of it in those terms. Everything else doesn't make sense. Osage giant Indians from the altar of the dim past. Tulsa workmen uncover many skeletons while excavating in Osage. A mass of human bones. Victims were apparently Indians. Bullet hole through skull told mute story. The skeletons of 5 men, apparently Indians, were uncovered yesterday on the farm of Colonel C.B. Lynch, north of Tulsa by laborers engaged in digging a cellar and a sewer ditch. News of the discovery was brought to Tulsa by J.W. Seifert, 1406 South Carson, who is a contractor on the excavation job. The farm is located 2.5 miles west and 1 mile north of Tulsa in the Osage Nation. While excavating for the basement, the workmen dug up 4 skeletons. The skulls were all detached, and there was every indication that the bodies had been thrown into a hastily dug trench. The teeth were in perfect shape and white. None of them were decayed. All of the skeletons had very large jaw bones and long thigh and arm bones, indicating that the men had been Indians of great size. Well, I don't think they're Indians with perfect teeth, not eating meat and sugars, okay? They were purely vegetarian, okay? So, of course, this is at a, time where they don't understand what we understand, with less information about these things. One skull found in the basement had a bullet hole in the front part. Well, maybe, or could have been evidence of trepanation or some sort of surgical. Who was it examined by? No evidence of wounds were found among the other bones. This doesn't seem to be an official excavation. No evidence of wounds were found among the other bones. In digging a sewer trench a short distance from the basement excavation, another skeleton was found, and the skulls of several others were found sticking out of the side of the ditch, but were not uncovered. There may be a dozen or more bodies in the vicinity that have not been dug up. That the Indians were buried there a long time ago was shown by the condition of the skeletons. Old residents of the vicinity are at a loss to account for the discovery. They remember of no wholesale killing in the Osage, and the slaughter must have taken place long before civilization had gotten this far. It was either a battle between warring Indian tribes or between Indians and white men. Perhaps a band of sturdy Sooners, which are settlers, were attacked by the red men, killed and carried away, but not before they had thinned the ranks of the attacking force. It is not customary for Indians to bury their dead hastily in trenches, however, which shows that there must have been cause for the Indians leaving the place in haste after firing had ceased and forced them to throw the dead into trenches. Well, maybe, or it could be evidence that in a rather large civilization like the Adena and the Hopewell, or the Temple Mound builders, or the Mississippian culture, or any related cultures, okay, when you have widespread area, large civilizations, and you don't have any evidence of particular outside enemies, if there were any, but in order to enforce, reasonable amount of security around these areas, and they were rather large, okay? There couldn't have been any considerable outside enemies. So you're talking about internal enemies, internecine enemies, which I'm sure are just as vicious and homicidal as any war could be. One of these giant personages, these large hominid humanoids, being buried with the rest of the people in the burial being of, average size, which you hear again and again, okay, in these accounts. And Oklahoma is no less one of these places, so you have to question some of these things. And it's pretty clear to me at this point that, this two-tiered society was often the case, and it continued and occurred into historical times. And we have obvious evidence of this even in modern times, as I had shown when I spoke to that Laotian girl, and she had sent me that these tribal chiefs in the Fiji Islands here, and here's one of the chiefs, and the rest of the people in the tribe are of average stature and even look different. Okay? And the Watusi tribe in Africa, with the Tutsis being their subject. The Tutsi and the Watusi people are in the same tribe. Okay, so you can call it what you want, but I mean the anthropologists and archaeologists in Indiana doing the research there on these places where they found, an Adena mound surrounded by a Hopewell wall, and the Adena and the Hopewell mixed it. They're thinking they're contemporary. So, and I've already come to this conclusion. I didn't need their research to tell me this. My own research told me that this type of two-tiered society existed up until historical times because of the accounts of the explorers and the colonists and the settlers. Okay? And you hear about it again and again, so just pay attention to when I read these accounts, because you're going to hear about it again, where you have this rather large skeleton buried with a bunch of skeletons that seem to be of average size or whatever. So here it's a clear indication of how the society operated. So this could have been an indication of some internecine type thing going on. So, I mean, obviously in a large civilization like the Adena and the Hopewell, okay, or the Mississippian culture, the Temple Mound builders, whoever they might have been, in large cultures like that, when you have a lot of people, okay, and it's clear to me that many of the reason there's no evidence of many more people, and when they estimate the inhabitants with comparing with the burials, well, there's no evidence of the other people in the tribes that live there. According to them, these people live for thousands. That should be giant burial grounds everywhere, okay, filled with people. All right, but there's not. So what it seems to be in a lot of the cases, and probably through a lot of the centuries and millennia through these cultures, is that most of the average people in these societies were cremated, and only the noteworthy ones were, submitted to burials or internments or whatever it is, in vaults, in gravel pits and mounds here, and we kind of one in a sand mound. So, all things to think about here. So I just thought these articles were interesting here. And I think this one, yeah, it's nothing else with this one here. But anyway, I thought these ones from Oklahoma were interesting to talk about, especially that one from West Virginia with the indecipherable inscriptions in bronze coins, copper and bronze coins, and woven coverings and whatnot. So be interesting to get to West Virginia. So we'll move on there next. But in between, I want to cover more of Dr. Robert Schoch's Voyages of the Pyramid Builders, and also this Smithsonian article on the Bering Strait. So we'll get to that too. All right, guys. So anyway, just wanted to throw those at you here. I thought they were interesting, and I'll be with you with another video real soon. All right. Bugcat 7 signing out. Peace.